Hi everyone, hope you're all doing really well and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So before I make a start on this short tutorial, I just want to remind you to subscribe to my channel to keep updated with all art related content, and if you're interested in learning a little bit more about coloured pencils or just generally want to practice or develop your skills, then head over to my Patreon. There's over a year and a half's worth of animal based colour pencil tutorials and they range from beginner to advanced level. The link to that is in the description below. So to make a start on this tutorial then, obviously this is the time-lapse version. The real-time version is on Patreon. I'm working on drafting film for this small 4x4 inch drawing and I've just put some Fabriano paper behind it to keep it white against the drawing board. I'm also going to be using a mixture of Fabercastell polychromos and Caran Luminance coloured pencils. I started by using the warm grey 1 polychromo to lightly map out the direction of the fur and add that first initial base layer just by shading in back and forth motions. With a sharp dark sepia using a light pressure, I'm drawing in the shapes that make up the eye, including all the light reflections and the shading in the dark areas. I'm also loosely sketching in the direction of the darker fur surrounding the eye. I'm using a variety of warmer colours like the olive brown 10% and the raw umber 10% luminance pencils to start building up the beige toned fur, gradually adding layer upon layer. On this particular surface being drafting film, it's completely smooth, unlike most papers which have like a significant grain to them. So the way in which layers are applied need to be really light pressured and like delicately placed, because you're in a way limited to the amount of layers that you can add because there's no kind of grooves for the pigment to kind of sit in. It's all layering on top of the actual surface. Using a mixture of the warm grey and the cold grey shades, I'm building up that beige coloured fur. Specifically the warm grey 3 polychromo and the French grey 30% luminance pencil are literally perfect colours for this fur. To darken the fur directly around the eye, I'm using a mixture of the Slate Grey Luminance pencil and the warm grey 5 polychromo. By shading in back and forth motions, almost flicking at the end of each pencil stroke, I'm creating that soft fur-like texture. Going in with a sharp black, this is where you can really start defining the shapes in and around the eye, and you want to shade in those jet black areas around the actual eyeball where those shadows are really dark. With a slightly lighter pressure, I'm working into the surrounding fur, flicking each individual hair and being quite delicate with each pencil stroke. I'm then filling in the pupil and shading around the highlighted reflections. You now want to start building up the colours that make up the iris. Always start with the brightest, most vibrant colour to use as the undertone. So I'm using the Terracotta, which is a really rich orangey tone, and then I'm working around the edges with the Bumt Sienna, which is a little bit more of like a burnt orange. Remember that the actual eyeball is spherical, it's not like a flat object, so the light is going to be hitting it at different points. So building up your shadows in the right areas and being really accurate with like the highlights and the subtle shapes will really make all the difference in making it look kind of three-dimensional. So I've built up the brown tones with the burnt umber, releasing my pressure slightly where the colour isn't as intense and increasing my pressure to create that really rich chocolatey brown pigment. With the dark sepia, I'm basically doing the same thing, intensifying the shadows to build that contrast. And I'm defining the highlighted shapes, waterline, and adding in those eyelashes that are reflecting back into the eye at the top. I'm going in with neutral tones like the warm grey 5 and the raw umber 50%, just to tone down the subtle shapes in the iris. You want to merge the edges with the surrounding pigment. I think there's always going to be a hint of blue in all animal eyes, especially in the reflections, so I'm lightly using the Skyblue to add that subtle tint in those specific areas. Using the dark indigo, which is a much deeper blue, I'm darkening the crease, the waterline, and defining the edges of the highlighted reflections. At this point I want to refine everything and make the texture of the fur and the detail in the eyes really crisp and realistic, so I'm going in with the black and the dark sepia just to add any final dark hairs and darken any areas in and around the eye. I'm actually going to use the shade Nougat to bring out those beige tones in the fur. It's a lovely kind of mousy brown colour, so literally perfect for the colour I'm trying to recreate. Using the Slate Grey Luminance pencil, I'm filling in the eyelid area above the eye. You'll find that the pigment will just like melt together with the surrounding layers, and that's the good thing about drafting film really, because it literally has zero tooth and it's completely a complete smooth surface, so it's really easy to blend colours together. So I'm just using it to add little extra shadows in and amongst the fur, and then with a sharp black I'm really darkening the shadows in the fur where those like tufts are overlapping to create that sense of depth by intensifying the contrast. I'm also flicking up each pencil stroke to replicate those individual wiry darker hairs above the eye, along with any subtle long eyelashes and random darker details in the fur. And then with the warm grey 5, I'm just going to repeat the same process in terms of detail, but obviously the lines and the hairs won't be as dark or intense as the black. Finally, I'm going to use the craft knife slice tool. This is my favourite step in any drawing, which allows you to pull out the highlights and take that detail to the next level. So using the ceramic blade, I'm gently removing those top layers of pigment to reveal the paper underneath. This allows you to create tiny, intricate details, bright white overlapping details, which kind of help to show depth, and it works amazingly well on this surface, probably better than any other paper that I've used actually. I'm just finishing off adding a hint of the burnt umber, and that's the finished drawing. So I hope you've enjoyed this short tutorial and have hopefully learnt something that you can apply to your own work. Like I said at the beginning, the real-time version, which is an hour and a half long, is on Patreon if you fancy giving it a go. Please remember to like the video and subscribe to my channel to see more colour pencil tips. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next one.